I worked in adoption for many years, and I worked with birth parents and adoptees, and I would work with women in their 80s coming, birth parents who placed their child for adoption, coming to talk about their grief in their 80s because there wasn't the support when they were pregnant and younger. What that brought to them in their lives to be able to tell someone. And sometimes I was the only person, or the other counsellors on the team were the only people they'd ever shared that with. That's powerful. I mean, that's amazing. And for people to do that, and that's why it's never too late. I kind of see my role divided in the sense of I work in the space of grief and trauma. I work in fertility and fertility grief, including pregnancy loss and support in subsequent pregnancies after loss. And I also work in the perinatal space, which is through pregnancy and in the first year of a child's life. I've been in the field over 20 years, and it hasn't always looked like grief, but there has been a theme of grief throughout my professional work and my training. And I just noticed it more and more over the years. You know, you might think, well, how is there any grief there? But in the perinatal space, but that can be non-death losses, such as we're a couple becoming parents. How do we do that? Where I'm a single person deciding to have a child on my own. How do I do that? Letting go of freedoms, letting go of the life that was, navigating, transitioning to being a parent, taking care of somebody else. So I deal with a lot of non-death loss as well. So when people hear about my job, they're like, "Oh, you're a grief counsellor. That's a tough one." Or I've had other comments such as, "How do you do that every day?" But my role is amazing because it's about death loss and non-death loss and helping people through change and transition in life. So that's kind of how I see my role. And I've made it that it includes those other areas, because to do grief all the time and trauma is not sustainable for me in my role. So I need to make sure that in order to have a long career of quality and to be sustained in this work, that I need to be mindful how much grief and trauma I absorb. So it is good for me. I teach, I work in the perinatal space and the fertility space and the grief space. And that helps me stay buoyant and energized and, you know, to have, I want a long career doing this. Big question. And I think to answer that is a very subjective response. So thinking about that, I feel like it's a very personal response. And I feel in this time in my life, a good life for me is health, is peace of mind, is feeling grateful for my education, feeling grateful for the work I get to do. I live in a great country in Australia, Sydney, Australia, feeling grateful for the lifestyle here and the opportunities. But I think the biggest thing for me about a good life is turning the noise down on comparing myself to others, turning the noise down on I need to be in a certain place or doing a certain thing. And I don't have that perfect, but definitely adjusting that noise. I think I'm a social introvert. I'm always kind of trying to figure myself out, like, because I do love people. I love being around people. I get energized by that. But I also need, like you just said, I need my space. I love to walk on my own. I love to read. I love to listen to music. But I do know that I need to retract in order to reset. And also in this work, I definitely need that. So just noticing. And recently, I've started to walk at sunrise a couple of mornings a week. Get up. It's torture to get up and go. But once I'm doing it, I just feel like a new person, and I feel so exhilarated and proud to have that structure in place and that I'm doing it. And that's really important, that I didn't realize how much I need more of that. And that's a light bulb moment for me to take care. Yeah. I think in this profession, you probably, the, what do you call it? Like the risk is not caring for yourself. The risk is minding everybody else. And I'm probably now at this point going, if I don't take care of myself, I can't do this work. I'm no good to anybody. So I think that's a light bulb for me at this point. But I've had lots of light bulb moments in my life, and I continue to have them. When it became personal was when I experienced a tragic loss in my life that became really personal. And my brother died when I was 24 and he was 22, my only sibling. And he died suddenly in his sleep. And that for me was life altering and is life altering. And I think the trajectory of my work and study and interest really kind of not spiral, but went from there in a very clear way. I mean, I was extremely fortunate to live in a rural community that literally wrapped their arms around our family in his death. So, and Irish culture does grief very, very well. We do rituals very, very well. We celebrate the person beautifully. So that was incredible and very moving, and to be supported. And we also support our grieving, not particularly the first month and the first year. And we have rituals within that time frame. So I felt really supported, have amazing extended family and friends. So, but as in my 20s, I have this vivid memory of he died in the winter. And I remember going back to Dublin where I was living to work, and I remember the loneliness of trying to find support, trying to find a group that wasn't bereaved widows or bereaved parents, but I was a bereaved sibling, and there was no such group that I could find. There was no internet. There was no, well, there was, but you had to go to a cafe. But there was, there were really limited resources. And I did eventually find a therapist who was life-saving. Like, I was so lost, and she was incredible in Dublin. And I didn't enjoy going to the sessions at sometimes because I had to really feel my grief and work through it. But it was a real lifeline for me. And I know the power of that. Like, that just was a lifesaver for me to learn how to be in the world again, with my brother not being here. So I feel emotional saying that, but I think what drives me every day is that somebody doesn't have to walk the streets searching for support, that support is available and should be more available. And I'm a real advocate for not leaving people bereaved alone. It's such a lonely, agonizing experience that people need to be supported. And our world is grief illiterate. We're not great at talking about grief. We might be good at the funeral, or we might be good around the time, but we're not great at sitting with the pain of another. We don't know what to say. We don't know what to do. We want to make it go away, and we want to fix it. And I think we need to start talking more. And I think there is a shift coming. I see it. But we need to start talking more, opening up these conversations and sitting with the discomfort. And it's the most normal reaction in the world not to want to feel pain, especially if you're seeing and experiencing someone else's pain. If you care about them, you want to make it okay for them. But actually, how we make grief okay, how we make it tolerable, is allowing the person to share it and feel it and work through it and learn how to live life with their grief. It's not going to go away. I mean, their grief is unimaginable. It's parental grief. And I think when, you're a surviving sibling and the only sibling, your role changes in the family. And I was really mindful of their grief, and they were really mindful of mine. But I think I'm really, on some level, grieving now for him, because I think I have permission to grieve now for him with what I know, with the theories I know, with the practice I know, with what I've read, what I've experienced. And I think it's more acceptable to grieve a sibling now. There's more information out there. There's more dialogue. So I think prior to that, I probably put it away, or, you know, and also I was in my 20s. You know, you just want to, it's such a shock to the system and you don't know how to be, but you also want to get on with life. So I think now I'm really acknowledging how hard the sibling grief is. I don't want to say good or bad. I just think we are hardwired to grieve, and we shouldn't do so in isolation. We should do so collectively with support. And that's the best way to learn to be with your grief, is in the support of others. And because it's lonely enough, it's harrowing enough, it's isolating enough. So, yeah, I don't think there's a good and bad. I just would love more support for people. Impacted, particularly in our community, with deaths that were close to me, and it became really personal. And that was really, really challenging for my community and my friends and myself. But I think what I learned was that death is a part of life. That doesn't mean I like it or I'm okay with it on a human level, but it allows me to do the work I'm doing. And yeah, I that dialogue is quite natural for me. I'm okay at sitting. I'm good at sitting with pain and trauma because I see the difference it makes. I see, like, I had a client, I was just thinking about this the other day, and I've seen this client 3 times in the last couple of weeks. And the difference in the physicality of this person, in the energy of this person, that they have a place to go with a traumatic grief when they didn't know how they were going to cope with it. Now, I've held space for that person, allowed them to express, helped them with some of the normalizing of grief. What's normal, what's appropriate for them, what's, supportive to them. And they've just walked out going, okay, I can handle this a bit better now. That makes sense. I'm not going mad. I'm actually experiencing a normal response to something that's really tough. And that's what drives me, because I can actually physically see the difference in this person. I think particularly through COVID, that was really tough, because we were collectively grieving for our sense of freedom, our worry, our health concerns. People were dying. I think that was really challenging personally for me and professionally. And I think that's when I've always taught, so that's been there. But I think I really made a conscious decision to, as you say, diversify, to, remain buoyant, to be able to give this the energy I need. And I have really good support systems. I have peer support. I have an excellent supervisor. I have mentors I can lean into. So I'm really resourced. I have great friends and family, and I see that really as important in helping me with this work. I'm not doing it alone. I may be doing it alone in private practice, but I'm not doing it alone, if that makes sense. I remember at the time a priest saying to me, I remember being in bed and the pain of that grief and not wanting to get up and see the world. And I remember the local priest ringing me and saying, get out of that bed. And I remember saying, I think I need support. I think I need counselling. And he said, it's too early for counselling. You don't need counselling. And I remember, I'm still to this day, can't believe he said that to me. But I remember in that time being shocked and thinking, I know what I need. You don't know what I need. But my parents were very wonderful, and my friends, like, they held me up to be proactive in getting that support. And my parents also accessed their own support.